everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, in this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, how you doing?
I am doing all right. I'm doing all right.
Now, is that a genuine all right, or is that an all right smile that you put on your face to hide the fact that you are in fact dying inside?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I'm better than I was last week, and then I have spaced out a little bit more time post-con. But now work is about to get real stressful, so I'm kind of like, oh, I had like a couple of days where I wasn't totally stressed out. Now I'm going to get all stressed again.
That sucks. Well, let's see. In my life, my basement smells like a dead animal.
Hooray!
So, this actually got cut from the recording from last week, but actually, as we were recording the Avengers discussion last week, I just happened to look over to my right and saw this big fuck-off 5-foot-long black snake in the basement there with me. So that's no bueno. So we had the pest control guy come and lay down scented glue traps to try and catch a snake, and he put about like 9 or 10 of them around in the basement. And they're scented with rodent musk as bait. And I've got like no sense of smell, so 1 or 2 traps wouldn't have bothered me. We actually put down a couple, before the guy came over, we actually put down a couple of traps of our own at the same time. And I couldn't smell a thing, but now they've got like a dozen of them spread across the basement. It all kind of adds up, so yeah, my basement smells like dead mice now. So that's fun. So, what else is fun is our topic for this episode. We are doing an Ask a Geek mailbag episode. We've had a lot of questions that have been sitting in the mailbag, waiting patiently to be answered. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and go through those and work through some of our backlog. So that's going to be fun. But, of course, there is procedure to follow, so we are going to begin, as always, with the random topic of the week. And for this week's topic, ever since I started shaving my head, I've become something of a haberdasher. That's a person who likes hats, for those who don't read books. I've become a hat enthusiast. I need to have some kind of covering on my head at all times when I go out. I've got a few different hats. I've got a nice fedora that I like to wear, when I'm going out someplace nice, or if I just want to feel cool that day. I've got a couple of ball caps, and I've even got a couple of silly caps that I just wear when I want to, feel fun. But one thing that's really irritated me about this whole hat enthusiast business is that it's very difficult for me to find baseball caps to wear. Because I want to get a bunch of, nerdy baseball caps that I can wear, stuff like maybe like an NES controller or a video game character on it. But the problem is because of the shape of my skull, I can't wear snapback caps, the ones that have the little, snapping clasp on the back. I have to get stretch caps with the elastic band because those are the only ones that'll fit me. And I don't know if there's been like some kind of fatwa or something issued against stretch caps for geeks, but you just cannot find these things everywhere. So, like, I've lost track of the number of times that I've gone into a store and said, oh, here's a cap that I really like, and look at the back of it, it's a snapback. I can't wear them, need a stretch cap. So, the question that I want to kind of put out to you, Kat, and to you, our listeners, is there some kind of geek merchandise that you wish you could find either more easily or find it all, but you just cannot find, and that just really drives you up the wall for whatever reason? So, Kat, what about you? What's a piece of geek merch that you would love to be able to get your hands on a little easier than you're able to now?
Oh, Jesus. Are we talking about just clothes or other things as well?
Anything.
Like, say, Okami figurines? That are less than like $300. Jesus Christ. I like figurines and stuff. And I have a little bit of a collection. And there's a couple of franchises that either it's just so hard to find in America, and then if you try and order it online, it's just so expensive. Figurines are already incredibly expensive.
So now, just for clarity, when you say Okami figurines, are you referring to the PS2 game of the same name, figurines from that, or is this like its own genre of figurine?
Oh, no, I'm talking about the game, which also incidentally released for the PS4, so I actually played through it a couple months ago and really, really enjoyed the improved graphics on the PlayStation 4. Look, it's like one of two games I have for the PS4. So I actually completed Okami. It's actually my first completion of a video game that wasn't on an original Game Boy.
You're having a Captain America moment. I beat that game.
It's the first time I've beaten a game on an actual console. So I got really excited about Okami. And it's gorgeous. And I had it for the Wii, and that was it. And anyway, but the figurines for it are outrageously priced. They're like in the $500 and $600 marks. They're just ridiculous. And the only other thing that you can ever find for it are plushies. And I'm trying not to collect plushies anymore because I have had such an abundance that I never do anything with anymore. It just kind of annoys me now. So there's a lot of figurines I wish that were cheaper and easier to find.
Now, I just want to ask, these figures that you're trying to track down, because it like I said, Okami's been around since the PS2 days. Do you think maybe they're that pricey because they're older, they've been out of print for nearly a decade, or are these newer figures that are just coming out and they're just ridiculously overpriced? They're just ridiculously overpriced.
They release like at least I'd say one very nice Okami figure like a year. And my friends always share this stuff with me, and they're always really gorgeous, very detailed, but just outrageous. Another thing I was just thinking about this now that I was thinking about overpriced figurines. If you've ever looked at Weta Workshop's website, everything there is incredibly expensive because it is all each thing is handcrafted.
Oh yeah, you're definitely getting what you pay for.
Yeah. But I was just thinking that I can't remember if Weta ever released like a Faramir figure of any kind. And Faramir is my favorite of all of the Middle-earth characters. He's just so fantastic. And there might have been a Faramir figure that was just out of my price range. But you know what would be in my price range is a goddamn Funko Pop. If you don't know, because you don't know me at all, I have a huge Funko Pop collection that I have accumulated over the years, most of which has been given to me for like Christmas and birthday. I have a ridiculous collection, and I do have 2 Lord of the Rings ones. And Lord of the Rings is sort of like my favorite franchise of all time. And they have not released anything for Faramir at all. And they will release like 14 variants of Frodo, but they won't release goddamn Faramir, who's like the best character in the whole fucking franchise. So Faramir, anything related to that character is a piece of merchandise I'd like to get my hands on.
Okay, so it's the Faramir stuff in general then. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Okay. So now we want to put the question out to you, our listeners. What is some type of merch that you can't seem to find anywhere, but that you would love to get your hands on? Kat said she wants cheaper Okami figures and anything Faramir, and I want stretch cap, geek related stretch cap baseball caps. So yeah, leave a note in the comments or send us an email. What are some geek merch that you just can't seem to get a hold of that you would love to get your hands on a little more easily than you can? And so with that, we are going to jump right into our Ask a Geek Mailbag episode here. So we've got a bunch of questions here that we're going to answer. So let's see. Let's dig in the bag here. What's the first one here? Okay. First one here is from the email, and it is from Kaiju Z, longtime listener. And he asked, do any of us watch My Hero Academia? And if so, if we lived in its world, what would our powers and quirks be, and would we be a hero or villain? So, Kat, do you watch My Hero Academia at all?
I do. I'm like a season and a half behind. And while I was at my convention, all of my guests wanted to watch the new episode, like that week's episode, and so like I watched an episode from the newest season, having been about a season and a half, or at least half a season behind, and I'm like, oh shit, I have no idea what's going on, but I'm so impressed. It's such a great show. If you've never watched it because you're slightly turned off by popular shonen series, always tend to run towards the mediocre line in terms of story and characters, and My Hero is one that doesn't. It's just tremendously good. 99.9% wonderful characters. That 0.1%, we all know who that is. That's a shitty character. But otherwise, it's just such a fantastic show. Very hot right now. And it really, really good. You should definitely watch it. I know a couple people who've just started watching it, and everybody who has watched it has just really loved it. I think if I lived in that world, I don't know what my quirk would be. I'm such bad at picking out what if I had a unique superhero power, what would it be? I would be a hero and not a villain.
Okay, so now I've never watched the show, so I don't understand what he means by quirks. I get powers, but what does he mean by quirks?
It's a power. Like basically, and the premise of the show is that most people are born with some sort of power that you discover by like early childhood. You should have discovered what your power is. And the story revolves around this young boy, Midoriyama, aka Deku. And he was born without any powers, even though his whole goal was to be exactly like the superhero All Might, who's he's the number one fan of All Might, and he just wants to be exactly like him, but he has no powers. And so he was picked on for a long time, and he enrolls into a superhero school, despite having no powers. And one day he meets All Might, his hero. And he impresses All Might to the degree that All Might says, I'm going to give you my powers. And so All Might passes some of his power onto Deku. And so Deku gains these abilities that are so incredibly overwhelming. The same powers as an All Might, but he can't utilize them because he's young, he's untrained, his body can't handle the sheer force of it. So most of the show is things going on at this wonderful, what is essentially a superhero academy of people learning about how to become a superhero. Like they legitimately, plan out their costumes and what their superhero names are going to be, but they're also made to fight each other, to train and do all that kind of stuff. So the story is mostly Deku getting involved in things to train to become a superhero, master the power that has been passed down to him, and then getting involved with people who want to do harm to superheroes, and specifically to All Might. So, fantastic show. I can honestly say I don't know what my quirk would be. If there's some sort of quirk where, like, you shed hair like a cat, and then it, like, tangles people's feet, that could be me, because I shed my hair a lot.
I really could have lived my life without hearing that.
It's normal. You're supposed to lose, like, X number of hairs per day, but because my hair is a little bit longer, it gets tangled up and shit. Like under the wheel of my chair and stuff. I am spitballing it here, guys.
How long is your hair?
It's
Jesus.
not that long right now, but between me and my roommate, who both have longer hair, it's a lot of hair floating around. We have to vacuum a lot. And then we have to clean the hair out of the vacuum. It's really annoying, actually.
Okay, well, let's see. I think I would be a villain because they have more fun. Let's see. My powers. I think if I were going to be a villain, I would want to be just not necessarily a really evil one, but just like a really annoying one. So I think my power would be I would make people forget things that are minor but still really important, like where they left their keys or something. That would be my superpower. Quirk.
Quirk and power. No, quirk is a power. That's what they call their powers in that world.
Oh, okay, all right. I thought it was like an upside downside thing. Like, okay, you have this advantage, but you also have this disadvantage. Okay, well then that would be my power to make people forget minor things, just to be annoying.
You would be a really annoying little villain.
I would call myself the absent mind.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good.
All right, so let's see. So thank you for that question, Kaiju Z.
Hi, Kaiju Z.
Who, interesting bit of trivia, he was actually one of our entrants when we had our logo design contest way back in the day. I can't remember if he was the one that we picked to win or not.
I think so.
Because I have the memory of a goldfish, and like I can barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning. There's no way I can be expected to remember who won a contest we held 10 years ago.
Kaiju Z likes all of my stuff on Twitter and shares all of my stuff on Twitter, so I love Kaiju Z.
Alrighty. Next question here comes from the Facebook, and this is from Phil Grady, another repeat offender. And he's got a question for you, Kat. He asked, what did you think of the proposal scene at the end of The Flash's musical episode?
Jesus, spoilers.
I'm guessing you're not there yet.
I'm so far behind. Guys, I'm really far behind. And it's because the internet at my last apartment was really shit. And I had such a hard time streaming those episodes. So I am I'm that far behind. I'm actually a little bit farther behind than that in all of those shows. And the musical episode is the episode where I was like, fuck, this sounds amazing. I really, really need to watch this. And then I still haven't, even though I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix now and I literally have no excuse. My soul currently belongs to Critical Role right now. And as soon as I'm caught up with all of Critical Role, I will probably go back to the stuff that I'm super behind on, like that. And I'm not actually mad about spoilers because I spoil myself on everything. But I do really, really love The Flash. And I love all of those DC shows, no matter how hammy they are or how friggin' angsty Oliver Queen gets. And I will catch up, and when I do, I promise I will answer that question.
Okay, so we'll stick a pin in that one. Okay, let's see. Next one here comes from Tyler. This is also from the Facebook, and he asks, besides My Little Pony, are there any modern, meaning 2010 or newer, cartoons that we enjoy? So I guess I'll go ahead and go first on this one, because there's quite a few that I've been watching. I followed Gravity Falls pretty religiously. When it was running new, which was a torment on my soul because Disney apparently had this thing where they'd only release a new episode like every 6 months or so. But I absolutely loved that series, and I was happy to see it end the way it did. It ended at the end of the second season by the creator's design. So it got a nice little beginning, middle, and end. It didn't drag on and on and on forever. And, the problem that I have with so many really popular cartoons is that they tend to just keep on going long after they should have stopped, or long after the creator should have realized that, they're not able to bring their A game anymore. But Gravity Falls was definitely a 9 out of 10 throughout the entirety of its run. There's really only a couple of episodes that I really didn't enjoy. One of them was the mini golf contest between Mabel and Pacifica Northwest. I didn't care for that episode. And then the other episode that I didn't really care for was the one where Stan takes the kids out on a road trip, and Dipper is still really kind of bummed out about him having to get over his crush on Wendy. So he does something that's so high school it's painful. He zeroes in on one of Mabel's friends and tries to start up a relationship with her, and Stan's got to give him the whole, no, look, you're just a kid. You need to sit down, calm down, get your head straight before you even think about getting into another relationship. I didn't really care for that episode because I hate teenage angst episodes, and that's pretty much what that story was. It was a teenage angst story. So yeah, I'm also a really big fan of Star vs. the Forces of Evil, which just finished its third season. I absolutely love that show because it's so unapologetically bizarre. And I absolutely love it. Me and my buddy Chip, we've been following it religiously and trying to come up with trying to follow along. And it keeps us guessing. We love to come up with all kinds of crazy theories about, okay, what's the big villain's plan? How does this character relate to these other characters? And we were really gratified with how this season went, because the theory that we had, I'm not going to drop any spoilers, but the theory that we had about whether or not this one character was connected in any way to the Muni royal family turned out to be true. And we were basically spending the second half of the season going, called it, we were right. So yeah, and of course, I love The Amazing World of Gumball. I just shotgun that whenever I have any spare time. Absolutely love that series. Again, because it's just so unapologetically weird. Kat, what about you? Any cartoons that you follow at all?
No, actually, that's not true. I follow Voltron. clearly.
Oh yes,
by
how could I forget?
numerous episodes.
How could I have forgotten that? Yes, of course. We're also religiously following Voltron: Legendary Defender on Netflix. And then, of course, I'm chomping at the bit for season 2 of Castle. That comes out. I'll be probably just squeeing all over that.
But otherwise, no, I don't follow any cartoons. I think the last 2 American cartoons that I followed were like Legend of Korra, and what I do follow is Avengers Assemble. Because I was gonna say before that was the TMNT cartoon, and I don't know how far back that goes. I did enjoy the TMNT cartoon, and Avengers Assemble, because Avengers Assemble is loosely based on the MCU, and it
kind of a reinterpretation of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got stuff like Stark Tower and, like Falcon and characters who were introduced into the MCU come into Avengers Assemble. But it's not 100% just the MCU.
Okay.
Obviously, you have stuff like fights with Thanos and Cosmic Skull and stuff. And for people like me who probably will never fully get into the comics, it's just a nice thing to do. And I probably won't go through and watch any of the older cartoons because that's just a lot of watching. But it's easy for me to just sit down and watch Avengers Assemble, which has characters I'm already familiar with. I don't have to go back too far. No origin stories necessary, but it does introduce me to more characters than just what the MCU provides.
Okay, neat. Okay, so thank you, Tyler, for that question. Next question here. This came from the email. This one's from Riley, and she's got 2 questions for me. First question is: as a game collector, what do I consider the crown jewel in my collection? Okay, well, my collection is actually pretty small comparatively. I've only got, I want to say about 300 games spread out across. Okay, let me tell you. When you see some of the collections that are out there, you'll realize that I'm not joking when I say mine is one of the smaller ones. There's a guy I'm following on YouTube named Metal Jesus he's got 7,000 games in his collection.
Jesus, indeed.
Yeah. So my collection at 300 is one of the smaller ones, and there's not a lot of really, super rare things. I will say that the item in my collection that I'm the most proud of is I have for the Sega CD. Lunar 2 Eternal Blue complete in box, and the box is completely undamaged, which if you know anything about collecting for either the Sega CD or the Sega Saturn, you know that those giant ass jewel cases that they put the games in would just completely shatter if you so much as looked at them funny. I cannot tell you, I can count on one hand the number of times that I have gone into a store and, looked through a store's Sega CD or Sega Saturn collection, and they've had more than one case that didn't have just a giant ass crack going down the side, because they didn't put them in, regular CD jewel cases like they did the PlayStation 1 or every other music CD ever published. They put them in these giant, 9-inch long, 6-inch wide, and inch deep plastic cases that just could not take any stress whatsoever. If you expose these things to a stiff breeze, they just explode in your hand. But I have a copy of Lunar Eternal Blue for the Sega CD, which on its own is a pretty rare game to find. I think I paid $150 for my copy, and the case is pristine. And I have worked very, very hard to keep it that way. Now, I may not have to work as hard in the future because there's a company called, I believe it's Limited Run Games that's doing it. They've actually got the molds for those jewel cases, and they're making new replacement Sega CD and Sega Saturn jewel cases. So I can go back and transplant some of my other Sega CD games into those new cases and have everything look nice and pristine. But right now, that's the crown jewel in my collection, is my Lunar 2 in an actual undamaged original Sega CD case. And it's complete in box, has the manual, the warranty card, everything. So I'd say that's my crown jewel. Her second question is, are there any games or consoles that you refuse to collect for? And I can tell you right off the bat that if you... Hang on. My PC's going into sleep mode here. You shouldn't be doing that. Okay. All right, we're back now. Okay, so her second question is, are there any games or consoles that you refuse to collect for? And I will say that if you ever see an Atari 5200 in my collection, rest assured that was given to me by somebody for free or was bequeathed to me by somebody who died, because I will never spend any money on an Atari 5200. And the reason for that is because of the controllers, which are legendary in the retro community for being horrendously designed. Not just because of the fact that, the buttons are squishy and hard to register and the joystick doesn't auto-center, but because they just break at a moment's notice. I mentioned before Metal Jesus Rocks, who's a big YouTuber and retro game collector. He actually did a whole video on his Atari 5200 and how disappointed he was in it. And at one point, he lays out all of the Atari 5200 controllers that he has. And he's got like a dozen of them. And of them, only one of them actually worked. And he actually said in a video that he did after that one, that as soon as he finished filming that one video, that one working controller had broken.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so rest assured, if an Atari 5200 ever turns up in my collection, it was donated to me, and I did not purchase that. I will not buy. I don't have any. Not just because of how bad the controllers are, but just I don't have any real desire to collect for the 5200 because there aren't a whole lot of games on there that I want that I can't get for either the 2600 or for the even more advanced 7800. So the Atari 5200, that's a console that I have no plans on collecting for. Okay. Let's see. So thank you for those questions, Riley. Next questions come from Teresa, and they are for you. The first one is for you, Kat, and she asks, what is an anime that has never seen a DVD or Blu-ray release that you would love to see get a re-release?
Oh, shit. Like something from a VHS day? Or something that was just...
I think for the purposes of this question, we're just going to say has never been released on DVD or Blu-ray.
Oh, God. Probably a lot of stuff. Oh, God. Well, like the one thing that I could think of, I think it eventually did get a DVD release, and I just haven't bought yet. God, oh, God. I'm trying really hard to think. Because the way the anime industry is moving, we are going to actually be seeing less and less DVD releases. And certainly there aren't many Blu-ray releases comparable to how many series just simply exist. Is that because everybody's moving to streaming? Yes, every single, not every single, but all of the major anime companies in America have to stream. They just have to, because we don't have anime on TV like the way Japan does. So if you don't stream it legally, if you don't have that option, people will just stream it illegally. But there just isn't as much of a market anymore for shopping for the actual hard copies.
And it sucks because now we're getting to the point where that shit's actually affordable. Do you remember when it was like $50 for a DVD that had like 3 episodes?
I remember paying, $25 for a VHS with 3 episodes on it. I definitely remember that. And it was like $30 if you wanted it with subs instead of dubbed.
And you had to buy it from a shady guy in a back alley. We've done this joke.
Yeah. Oh, God. It was really the dark times before the Empire. Like, it was really, oh, man. It was bad times. And now you can stream so much for free with no subscription to anything. So it's really a wonder that anime companies are staying afloat, because of they're basically forced by the audience to offer a lot of stuff for free. I've tried to. I think what I have really, really wanted a DVD release of is the second season of the story of Koku, which is my favorite shoujo anime, like, probably ever. It's just so good. And the second season never legally came to the U.S., but it's one of those things where it was an old Geneon title right before Geneon folded, and it briefly got scooped up by Funimation, and then they just immediately let the license lapse. So there was never a Funimation release of it. There was only a Geneon release. And then they never picked up the second season. And that was a real shame, because I may have watched a little bit of that illegally just to see what the hell was going on in season 2. And certainly from like the episode synopsis that I read.
Okay, then at this point, I'm going to have to ask you to hand over your get out of jail free card, because of all the stink you've made in the past about pirating and streaming illegally.
I don't do it anymore, for God's sake. So shame on me. Slap my wrist for something that was never released in the U.S. I did not fully pirate. And that was still in my pirating days, which I do not do it anymore, and I do not condone it. You should not pirate things, even if they don't come to the U.S. ever, but especially if they do. And I only watched a little bit of it, because it was extremely hard to find, even for pirating. But that's something I really wanted a release of. But there's a lot of stuff nowadays where I think, ooh, that would be really great to own. And then I think I don't need to own it, because it's always going to be available for streaming.
Now, something that I've noticed in my forays into stores is I don't see anymore the trend of anime being released on DVD piecemeal. All I'm seeing now is collections of like a whole series or a whole season. And they're getting really affordable. So do you think that maybe they're just releasing the collected series as like a limited thing, because now maybe the format, the Blu-ray, the DVD and Blu-ray formats have just gotten cheaper to manufacture? Or do you think that they're just doing that as like kind of like Best Buy does the steelbook editions for the hardcore collectors?
No, I think they honestly do it because really, a large part of why anime used to be so expensive, at least from what I can glean from living through the bubble, is that, okay, we were paying $30 per DVD, and then there'd be like 6 in a season or whatever, and we were paying so much because you're paying for the material. For one, you were paying for the material for each individual DVD, each individual DVD case, all of the packaging, the time spent by a graphics department to create graphics for each individual DVD. There's a lot more money going into it than just a couple of pieces of plastic than you would think. But also, I think they used to release it piecemeal because that's what they would get at a time. You would get a handful of scripts based on how much had been released on TV, because a lot of it was stuff that was being released on TV in Japan. And that went away as streaming became more popular, as the way licenses changed. So I think a lot of it used to be that the Japanese companies didn't fully trust American companies, or they just, the way the licenses themselves worked, they might have only gotten a license for a couple of episodes at a time. And then they had to buy more of the license, get more of the episodes, release more of the episodes. So now, if you do buy a DVD copy, it's almost certainly a box set. If it's a newer anime, it's definitely a box set. And I think that's what I know that's what people want. Nobody wants to individually collect these DVDs anymore. It used to be a whole thing where you'd get a box. I don't know if you ever got any of them, but you'd get a box with one DVD and a special item in it, and then the box would be big enough for the rest of your DVDs.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Sometimes they'd be big enough for the rest of your Sometimes they'd be big enough for 3 DVDs out of a 6 DVD set. And it was just an enormous waste of space. So there is a certain amount of people just don't want individual sets anymore. And a lot of us have been in the game for a while, and we don't have room for that many DVDs on the shelf because we collect everything. And stuff with individual volumes just takes up too much goddamn room. I could see them doing it just to save space in a warehouse. That's what I would do. And there are a lot of very impressive, very beautiful, and very expensive collector sets if you still want them.
Which segues nicely into Teresa's other question, which is when buying movies, anime, games, whatever, do you tend to buy the vanilla release more, or do you tend to go for the special collector's edition?
Ooh, I could definitely answer this. I almost always go because that's what I can afford. There are a couple of anime titles, depending on who the publisher is. There are companies like NIS America and Aniplex that kind of only do collector's sets, and you just scream and scream into the void because the only way you're going to get a full goddamn Blu-ray set of Natsume's Book of Friends is if you buy the super, super expensive, like $60 a pop version of the fucking specialty set. It's goddamn annoying. It sucks when there is no vanilla release. If you have the option, that's great. It's great that you have options for the people who are collectors. But when you only have the most conceivably expensive way to purchase it, you're kind of a douche. I'm looking at you, and I asked somebody. The exception that I make to the vanilla versus collectors is for Marvel movies, because Marvel movies usually have really, really nice steelbooks. And I don't buy steelbooks for anything else but Marvel movies. I don't know why. I just happened to get a couple of them because I worked at Best Buy at the time, and on release day I was like, ooh, I really like this cover. It's really cool. It started, I think, with Guardians of the Galaxy, which is still probably one of the best steelbook covers. And now it's just a collection. Like, now I have to do it because I'm collecting it that way. And Black Panther just came out the day that we're recording, and my friend who still works at Best Buy tipped me off about what their volumes were going to be, and I'm so not getting one now. I totally missed out on my chance.
Oh, that's sad. Well, let's see. For me, when I'm buying games, because I'm one of the people who still insists on buying the physical releases, it really depends on what comes in the special edition and how much it costs. If it's something like, oh, if you get the special edition, the only thing you get is maybe, an extra character skin or some piece of in-game content, I tend to buy just the vanilla release. Because I know that eventually that exclusive content is going to be downloadable content later on down the line that I can get maybe a little bit cheaper. I did cheat once, and that was when Mortal Kombat X was released. I got the PC version because that's how I buy most of my modern games that I have a PC version, so I'll buy the PC version on Steam. And they announced that if you pre-ordered it, you would get Goro as a playable character right at the start. And I was like, yes, he's like one of my top 3 favorite characters. It's like, yes, playable Goro. Thank you. I've been wanting this since I was a child. Yes, I will pre-order this. So that's where I turn in my get out of jail free card on the pre-order debate. But if it's something like you get maybe like an art book or maybe a little figurine or some like poster, then I'll be a little more inclined to get the collector's edition. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last several years, certainly since the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 days, is those collector's editions have started to come with some really nice stuff. Like I just recently, the one that really blew me away was recently purchased from a retro store a copy of, I say copy in air quotes, given that it comes in this big giant fuck off box, of the Halo Reach Legendary Edition, which it lives up to its name because it comes with this giant ass statue of Noble Team, the characters that you fight alongside in the game. You get Dr. Halsey's journal, which comes in this neat leather and rope bound book that you can actually flip through. You get just a whole bunch of neat extras with that. So I might have to keep an eye out for other Halo Legendary Editions down the line. I also recently purchased for the Switch. I got the Shantae Half Genie Hero Ultimate Edition on pre-order, and that came with a neat art book and the game's soundtrack, which is really cool. So it really there's got to be some kind of physical object that comes with the special edition for me to really spring for the extra money to get it. If it's just a piece of digital content that doesn't really add anything that I can like put and show off on my shelf, or put something I can put up on my wall and show off, I'm not going to get the special edition. I'm just going to get the vanilla edition. But if it comes with some kind of neat little treat that I can sit up on my shelf and have it look nice, then I'll definitely get the collector's editions. Now, as for movies, I'm more concerned about what kind of extra special features actually come on the disc. So if I find out that the collector's edition comes with like this extra behind-the-scenes documentary, then I'll jump on that like a leech. Otherwise, I don't really care whether or not I have, the regular edition or the steelbook. And I think you were about to say something, Kat?
Oh, I was just going to make a joke about how you need your collector's edition to contain collectibles.
Exactly! Yeah, my collector's edition needs to contain collectibles. Damn, that would have saved us about 10 minutes on this right there.
Oh. But puns! Yeah. We've got puns!
Okay, but anyway, thank you, Teresa, for your questions. Let's see here now. Next one here comes from the email from, I swear to God, this is the name that showed up in the from line, Killer Tomato 7. And he asked all of us, what is a Star Wars story that we think deserves its own movie? So, Kat, why don't you lead off on this one?
Mara Jade, is that her name?
Yeah.
Hello, that deserves a movie. Not that we're going to see it in the current form of movies. I barely know anything about it. I don't know. We might, and here's why I say that. Okay.
Mara Jade debuted in Heir to the Empire, which was the same novel that Grand Admiral Thrawn made his debut, and they've already brought Thrawn over into the new canon. He first showed up in Star Wars Rebels, and he's also got his own novel in the new canon, written by Timothy Zahn, the author who originally created those characters. So if Disney is willing to bring over Thrawn into the new canon, I could very easily see them bringing over Mara Jade in some fashion, and given how fresh the new canon is, they could very easily slot her in somewhere.
Yeah, that I don't know too much about any of the novels or comics or extended anything, so that's what I know. What I know is Mara Jade. Just because enough people have talked about her, I've seen cosplays, stuff like that. So I'm like kind of fixated because it's the one little thing that I do know, and I'm like, okay, let's see that. And I was kind of hoping it would come in into The Last Jedi, or we'd get some sort of hint or something, because she's such a important part of the characters that we know and love the most. Are the original trilogy characters. That's just our generation grew up on these films, and not as much on the prequels, because the prequels were coming out when we were in like middle school and high school. So we grew up on the original trilogy. So I want to see more of the original trilogy characters. Obviously that can't happen now because it's too late. But to explore that aspect of it, the Mara Jade and her relationships and stuff like that. I'm a sucker for a bad guy turned good. I love those kinds of characters. And her interactions with all of the original trilogy characters would just be really quite spectacular to watch.
Okay, all right, Mara Jade, neat. If you want more Mara Jade, Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn, definitely pick those books up. You will love them. I'm gonna go off a similar tack. I am a huge Grand Admiral Thrawn fan. I was so happy when he was brought over into the new canon. I've read the first book of the first new Thrawn book that Timothy Zahn put out. I think it was last year, and I absolutely loved it. And I would really love to see Thrawn get his own movie. I really think he's such a charismatic and such a chess master character. The only way that I could really describe it that would give you a base of reference, Kat, would be, imagine if Xanatos from Gargoyles had blue skin and existed in the Star Wars universe. That's
Yes.
Grand Admiral Thrawn.
That sounds pretty amazing.
I would love to see a Grand Admiral Thrawn movie. And that would if I could get that, I would then forgive Disney for the sickly child plot that we got in The Last Jedi. I was like, okay, you gave us, episode 7 was a goddamn mess, but you gave me Grand Admiral Thrawn. All is forgiven. We're calling it square.
Bless you, my child. You are forgiven.
Yes. And bonus, that would also be a good way to reintroduce Mara Jade into the new canon. So bonus. 2 birds with 1 stone.
Both get what we want.
Yep. So yes, Thrawn, the movie. Make it happen. Okay, and let's see here. We got about a half. Okay, so here we got, this one's from Mark, and it's for me, and he asked, what do I think of the announcement that Rick and Morty is getting 70 more episodes? Well, first off, I'd like to say it's about goddamn time that Adult Swim realized what they had, and actually started commissioning a full run of the series instead of just going on a season-by-season basis. My one worry is how long it's going to take for those episodes to come out. Because one of the things that Rick and Morty fans like to bemoan is there's just a long wait between seasons. I think between seasons 2 and 3, it was like a year and a half. And for that, we only got like 10 episodes. So I would hope that, that now that we've got 70 episodes coming down the pipe, that the showrunners would kind of, get a move on getting these things produced and put out, so that we don't, we'll all have all 70 episodes come out before we all die. The other worry that I have is that, if they, I don't want them to try and pump these episodes out too fast, because I still want the show to maintain the high quality that it's had for the last 3 seasons. Because it's one of those shows where whether you're a fan of it or not, you can tell that the creators are bringing their A game for every episode. And I want them to continue to keep doing that. And I'm kind of afraid that if they have 70 episode order to fulfill, that they might try and start rushing things. So that's my one real concern. But no, I'm excited, and I can't wait for more Rick and Morty. All right. So let's see here. Any other questions here that have been sitting here for a while? Okay. Oh, here's one actually that relates to something we were discussing for an earlier question about DVD releases. And the question for you, Kat, this one comes from Rick, and he asks, do you think that an anime channel in the US would be successful? I'm talking about a cable channel that would run all anime all the time. Now, I know that Funimation tried having their own channel a few years ago, and it didn't really pan out. Am I remembering that correctly?
That is correct. Funimation did have a channel. There has also been, I want to say there's been like an anime channel, but I don't know that it was on cable. If there was, I didn't have it. I did for a hot minute have the anime channel, and I did like it, but it's a tough thing to do. And I'll tell you why. Because anime with plot, which is a lot of it, has to be watched in order. And it's one thing when you have like an episode once a week on like Toonami or Adult Swim or whatever it's currently airing it on Cartoon Network, because that's time you can set aside, on a regular basis at night on a weekend. You can just sit down and watch the latest episode of whatever. And if you don't catch it, well, it's available online already, and probably has been for like 4 months. The problem with the way Funimation channel went was that it was just episodes, yes, that were in order, yes, but it was like daytime. Like I'd be watching Big Wind Up or something, which is how I found Big Wind Up, which is like my favorite sports anime ever, and I don't really watch too much sports anime, so that's not saying much, but still, if you wanted to catch the previous episode, you were having to go back maybe a couple of hours, but also then maybe the day before, and man, that was kind of weird. I could never watch anything in order, and you could record the episodes, and I know I recorded some episodes with a DVR, but you could fill up your DVR pretty fast. The other problem with having a TV channel is that that's not a lot of people are pursuing those licenses anymore. Since most licenses are just happening for streaming in certain countries, it's more money that the anime company would have to pour into a license. It's just one more thing that they'd have to spend money on that takes away from spending their money on a different license or dubbing or something like that. And there's another question: do you dub it? Because that was what Funimation did. Funimation threw all of their dubs onto a channel and just let it run. And I found a couple of good shows that way. But if you have a preference, and many people do, there's quite a heated internet war going on about it at all times. If you don't have your preference,
much like the Hatfields and the Koi, their war is never ending. And
yes, exactly. If you prefer subs, you would not have liked the Funimation channel because it was all dubbed. And if you put all dubs on there, you're definitely gonna, or if you put all subs on there, you're gonna lose people then there too. So I think maybe a few years ago, a channel might have worked, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't work now. We have entered the age of streaming. We are solid in the age of streaming. We see that it can work. We have ways to make it work. I don't think a TV station works. And that's a whole nother department and division that an anime company would have to maintain. If Funimation had a whole division just for TV, and it just became such an expensive burden to keep up that's why they stopped. If you were to just create a new company just so that you can have a channel, you'd be looking at licensing expenses of your own to try and get this anime from that company and that anime from this other company. It would be a logistical nightmare. And that's, you'd have to be getting shows that have already been licensed for TV release, in which I don't know if there's exclusivity things in there, because there aren't too many channels that show anime, but when we think of anime airing on TV, we're thinking of network. And maybe a handful of shows geared towards kids and not much else. So if there's any sort of exclusivity tracks in those that already have been licensed for TV release, yeah, you could be just running into so many problems. It's a legal cluster.
Quagmire.
It is a quagmire. That's the word I was actually looking for. And it's just not worth it for most companies because they don't make enough revenue off of there. So I don't think it would succeed nowadays. 10 years ago, fine. Today, probably not. So
then this is a question I kind of want to throw out just for my own curiosity. So why do you think that, what makes Adult Swim and Toonami, which are basically the same thing, let's all be honest, guys, how has that managed to be such a success showing anime on television? Do you think maybe it's just because they've had such a devoted fan base already established that they're kind of grandfathered into this new age of streaming? Or is it because maybe they're only showing so much anime at a certain block that they can kind of keep their licensing expenses down? Yes, all of these things.
Cartoon Network had more than just Adult Swim. They did have an afternoon block back in the day that us 90s kids would be running home after school to catch certain shows. And then they had Adult Swim. So they have the historical precedent, basically. There is an established fan base who has been around for a long time now. And they have a lot of money. they have the money to go out and spend to scoop up these shows. They have the audience. They have the coin. There was one more thing that I was thinking. Yeah, and they've made the mistake of not having anime on there before. There was a dark time where the nightly shows were just none of it was anime, and a lot of people complained. And then they made a big deal about bringing the block back, so that I don't know that it is Toonami or Adult Swim, whichever one it is. They made a big deal about bringing back an anime block, and I mean, there's some really good shows on there right now. Currently, I don't know everything there, but I know they're airing My Hero, and they're airing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and these are, two of the hottest titles of any and all anime in America right now. So what they're getting is very good. It's very hot. So I'm assuming it cost them a pretty penny, but they've got what's going on right now. They are hip and hot, and it's good for people who do enjoy the dubs. It's good for people who do enjoy aren't necessarily going to get wound up about binge watching, because that's another reason why TV shows, TV channels doesn't work anymore, because we love to binge watch our stuff. And yeah, there's just a historical precedent for it. Other channels, like Sci-Fi Channel, used to have a bit of an anime block, but they had dropped it so long ago that you have to be over the age of 30 to remember it. Like, my God, nobody has successfully kept it up long enough for it to be expected of them, like it is Cartoon Network.
Okay, all right, and I think that about rounds it out. So that's all the time that we have for questions for this episode. So yeah, thank you to everyone who sent in their questions: Kaiju Z, Phil, Tyler, Steven, Lisa. There were some questions for Skyblaze that were in there that we didn't get to ask because she wasn't here this week, but we're going to go ahead and put your questions back in rotation and ask her the next time she's in. Thank you, as always, for sending in your questions. As always, you can send them to us to the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com. We love getting your questions. We love reading on the air. These Ask Geek Mailbag episodes are always a load of fun for us to do, and even just the regular segment during the regular episodes. We love doing these. It's one of our favorite segments of the show. So, yeah, get your questions in. You might get them read on the air, and we love hearing from you guys. And that's about all the time that we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. So we will see you next week when we are discussing Deadpool 2, which I have been very much looking forward to. And have you seen the advertising that they're doing now for it in the DVD stores?
Yes! Those are so good!
For those who don't know what we're talking about, there's apparently this thing going on, and I don't know if it's Best Buy or if it's all DVD stores, but the Fox is really pushing Deadpool 2 by re-releasing the first Deadpool movie, but in these cover sleeves that are spoofs of covers for other movies. So like there's one like, My Cousin Vinny, but it's Deadpool, or The Terminator, but it's Deadpool. Or my personal favorite is the one for X-Men Origins Wolverine, where on the back Deadpool holds up a sign that says, "I was in this movie, but I'm not really." So you might have seen the post floating around on Facebook, but it's really neat. Maybe I'll find a copy of the post and I'll share it to the Nerd of the Third Power Facebook. But it's really funny what they're doing with this. So yeah, next week Deadpool 2. We're really looking forward to it. We'll see you guys next week. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the cat.
We'll see you next week. Taka, play us out.